Hello there guys, and welcome to the complete settings video for Microsoft Flight Simulator Sim Update 10. In this video, I will be taking you through all the changes I've made to my PC settings, nVidia control panel settings, as well as the in-sim settings. This video has been produced after hours of testing with different aircraft scenery configurations and settings. The aim of this video is not to necessarily get you more FPS, but to get you a smoother experience in the sim. Of course, performance is a consideration, however, I've always prioritized a smoother experience over more FPS. Let's get started. Let us begin with the PC settings. As a refresher, I'm going to go through all the settings, including the ones I covered in Sim Update 9. Worthwhile mentioning that some of these settings have changed, so there's a lot of merit in watching this part of the video. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on the Windows button on your keyboard and we're going to search for Power. From Power, select the Power and Sleep settings. Then click on Additional Power Settings. From this menu, you'll be presented with the different power plans that are available on your computer. In my case, I have the Ultimate Performance setting, which I have selected. For most of you guys, you will probably see High Performance, Power Saver, and so on. Go ahead and select the High Performance if you do not see Ultimate Performance. This will not increase FPS, but has significantly reduced the stuttering and the pauses I used to suffer from. Let's hit on the Windows keyboard button once more on your keyboard. This time, we're going to search for Graphics. And we're going to select Graphics Settings from the menu. From the Graphics Settings, you are presented with three items: the Hardware Accelerated GPU Scheduling, Variable Refresh Rate, Graphics Performance Preference. I've done extensive testing with hardware accelerated GPU scheduling, and I can report that it has indeed increased FPS on my setup. However, it has introduced a lot of stuttering, so my recommendation is to turn this off. If your setup is equipped with a variable refresh rate, go ahead and turn it on. It will reduce tearing on monitors that have higher refresh rate than the FPS in-game. The graphic performance preference is something that we've covered in Sim Update 9 and it remains valid for Sim Update 10. All you need to do here is browse to Microsoft Flight Simulator and from the options menu select High Performance. If you are unable to find Microsoft Flight Simulator, please refer to my Sim Update 9 video, link provided in the description section of the video. We are going to hit on the Windows key on the keyboard once more, and this time we're going to search for Game Mode. We're going to select Game Mode Settings. After extensive testing of Game Mode, both on and off under different scenarios, settings, configurations, airplanes, and sceneries, I have found that it will give you 5 to 7 FPS on average when turned on. But also, it will reduce stuttering to a great extent in-game. I highly recommend that you turn Game Mode on. Next, we are going to hit on the Windows key button and we're going to search for Flight Simulator executable by typing Flight Simulator. And as you can see now, I have the Run command. We're going to right-click on this command and say Open File Location. We're going to right-click on flightsimulator.exe, select Properties, and then select the Compatibility tab. In previous versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator, we used to disable full screen optimizations. Unfortunately, disabling this after Sim Update 10 will introduce stutters and will degrade performance. It is my recommendation that if this is ticked, that you untick it. Also, ensure that you go to Change High DPI Settings and make sure that the High DPI Scaling Override is unticked for this version of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Let us now take a look at the nVidia control panel settings. I have arrived at these results after extensive research and hours of testing. Please make sure that you follow the instructions on the screen in order to maximize performance and the experience in the sim. First, we're going to go to Manage 3D Settings and select the Global Settings tab. Click on Restore to restore all the settings to the default settings. Next, go to Program Settings, select Micorosft Flight Simulator, and click on Restore. This will restore everything to the default global settings. Let us now take a look at the NVIDIA control panel settings for Micorosft Flight Simulator. The first one we're going to stop at is the low latency mode. If you have a G-Sync or FreeSync monitor, I highly recommend that you turn this on. G-Sync or FreeSync will dynamically change the refresh rate of your monitor to match the in-game FPS. What this option will do is it will prioritize latency by fully minimizing queued frames, thus providing you with a very smooth experience. This is not going to increase FPS, but if you have a G-Sync monitor, it will really improve the smoothness. It will remove the stuttering, especially when you are panning around the camera inside the virtual cockpit. Worthwhile noting that I am using a G-Sync capable monitor, and thus the monitor technology has already been selected as G-Sync. The next item is Power Management Mode. Make sure that you select this to prefer maximum performance. I think we have already discussed this in Sim Update 9. The next one is Texture Filtering Quality. Now there are several options that you can choose here: high quality, quality performance, and high performance. After extensive testing, I can tell you that high quality and high performance actually do nothing. You are better off selecting either quality if you want a better image quality, or performance to prioritize performance over quality. I highly recommend that you select performance. Texture filtering trilinear optimizations is turned on. After extensive research, I have found that leaving threaded optimizations on auto gives the best performance and the least amount of stuttering. Make sure this is set to the global setting. As far as vertical sync is concerned, if you have a G-Sync monitor, I recommend that you turn this off. However, if you have any other type of monitor, I recommend that you use the 3D application settings and manage V-Sync through the in-game settings. For completeness, I am using a 2K monitor, as you can see here, to 560 by 440p and a refresh rate of 165 Hz. For those of you with G-Sync capable monitors, I highly recommend that you go to Setup G-Sync from the NVIDIA control panel and tick the option Enable G-Sync and G-Sync Compatible. Also, very important that you select Enable for windowed and full screen mode. Even if you are running only in full screen mode, this option seems to give much better experience in terms of smoothness in the sim. Let us now take a look at the in-sim settings. As you can see, I'm running Micorosft Flight Simulator in 2K full screen mode. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on the settings and configurations that affect visual quality and performance the most. You may refer to my other settings videos for more information on the other settings. First, let's take a look here at anti-aliasing. Now, with Sim Update 10, nVidia DLSS has been introduced with several presets to choose from, quality being the one that gives you the best visual quality, and ultra performance gives you the best performance. Now, while this anti-aliasing method does provide you with more performance, it is unusable with this preset or this one here. The balance looks okay, and the quality is the best looking one in terms of the smoothness, the jagged lines, and of course give you some performance. However, I found that TAA is the best anti-aliasing method in terms of visual quality. It does not really tax performance that much as opposed to NVIDIA DLSS. You can get about 4 to 5 FPS with this particular anti-aliasing method and the quality preset. But it introduces some shimmering, especially when you're over water textures. And I just don't like the way it looks. Also, when you change the dials inside the cockpit, it looks as if there is a crossfade effect when the numbers change, which I personally do not like. And I felt that having TAA as the anti-aliasing method is really the best in terms of visual quality versus performance. I, of course, keep the render scaling at 100%. You can, however, if you are running a 4K monitor, bring this down a little bit for more performance without really affecting visual quality that much. The AMD Fidelity FX sharpening setting is something that was again introduced in Sim Update 10, and I have done extensive testing. I took a lot of screenshots to compare this slider with the 0 value and a 200 value, and I honestly did not see that much of a difference. What this option does, it evens out the sharpening on the images so that they look pretty even in terms of the sharpness level across the image. Personally, this hasn't affected performance on my machine. At least I haven't really noticed any degradation in performance, whether it's on 200 or 0. The FPS remained unchanged. I just left it at the default setting. VSync is turned off as I have G-Sync enabled and I do not need VSync. HDR10, I don't have an HDR monitor, and so this option on and off doesn't really change anything on my machine. I haven't noticed any degradation in performance with this option on or off. If you are not running an HDR capable monitor, I recommend that you keep this off. Now, with DirectX DX11 and DX12, obviously Asobo has brought in additional support for DX12, and after extensive testing, I didn't really see that much of a difference in terms of performance when using DX12. However, it introduces a lot of stuttering on my machine, so I decided to use DX11. It is still by far the best to use for Micorosft Flight Simulator. DX12 is in beta. I personally do not recommend it, just based on my extensive testing and in different scenarios. So I recommend that you keep this on DX11. It gives you the best performance and better smoothness overall. Now let's take a look here at the terrain level of detail. And this, guys, is probably the single most important slider in Micorosft Flight Simulator. And suffice it to say that from Sim Update 9 video, I have shown you how it really affects performance considerably. And so if you are on a high-end machine, I recommend that you take this anywhere from 200 to 325. Do not exceed 325 because that will definitely start degrading your performance. So if you have a 3090 card, and sufficient cooling, you can definitely, take this up to 325. Don't go any higher than that because it will definitely degrade performance. Now, for all other users, including the ones using a 3090 card, what I found is using a value between 175 and 200 gives the best performance in any airport. So, for example, if you are at Los Angeles or Boston or say London Heathrow, you definitely, those are very intensive areas in terms of the scenery and the surrounding of the airport. There is a lot of buildings, and so having this at higher than 200 will definitely bring your machine to its knees. So I have found my sweet spot, by the way, has been 175. 175 is the best setting for me. However, if you take this down to 150, you will actually not notice that much degradation in visual quality. The sim would still look very good. In fact, the videos that I've created, the opening videos I created with this settings guide uses a 150 terrain level of detail. You've seen the area in the beginning around LaGuardia also looks very good. The buildings look very sharp, and there is sufficient AutoGen in the area to make it look very good. So I recommend that you take this to 150 for the best experience. Now, If you have a medium to low end machine, you can take this to a value between 100 and 120. That will serve you very, very well. And again, the visual quality is not affected that much. Maybe around cities, you will find that it doesn't look very good sometimes in some situations, but for the most part, 120 actually looks very good, and 150 looks superb. Even in my situation and in very intense areas, 150, between 150 and 175 is the ideal setting. Now, I don't change any of these values. I leave all these values as they are. You can definitely look at these and change them. By the way, changing this from ultra to high for the off-screen terrain, pre-caching, terrain vector data, buildings, and trees will not really affect performance that much. You might get 1 to 2 FPS with each one of these. So combined, if you take them all to high, you will benefit. However, if you change 1 or 2 of them, I did not really see that much of a difference in terms of performance. So if you want to turn any of these down to high, make sure you turn all 4 of them to actually see some noticeable difference in terms of performance. However, the grass and bushes, when you take this down to high, you will immediately see a drop or beg your pardon, you will see an increase in performance. And the performance is about 3 to 4 FPS in situations where there is dense grass and bushes. So this is actually something that will change your performance. And obviously, if you change all of these to high, you will gain somewhere between about 6 to 8 FPS, depending on the actual location where you're at and how much buildings, trees, and grass and bushes are there. But definitely putting this on high, and by the way, in terms of the visual quality, and the difference is very subtle. You can't even tell from a distance, but as you zoom in, you'll be able to see, of course, there is more grass and bushes with this set to ultra than to high, but on high, it looks absolutely fine. There is absolutely no change in how your experience is overall. So I recommend that you keep this on high. Object level of detail, again, this is another slider that will affect performance moving in 50s increment. So 200, if you go to say 180, it will not really change that much in terms of performance. But if you take it to 150, you will definitely notice some improvement in performance. For high-end machines, I recommend that you keep this on 200. Your machine will be able to take it. For medium-end machines, I recommend that you take this down to 150. And if you are running on a low-end machine, you can take this to a value between 100 and 130. You'll have to test this out a little bit, see what works for you. But from 100 to 130 should be fine for low-end machines. If you have an RTX card, changing the volumetric clouds from ultra to high to medium to low will not really change performance whatsoever. RTX cards are very well optimized for volumetric clouds in Micorosft Flight Simulator. So you can keep this at ultra and enjoy the beautiful clouds. Anything below that, I think, makes the clouds look a little pixelated, and I don't recommend it. So if at all, if you require more performance, I would recommend lowering other options and keep this on ultra for the best visual quality. Texture resolution is something that can also affect performance, not necessarily FPS, but if you have a graphic card that does not have a lot of VRAM, you might benefit from lowering this resolution a little bit. Maybe take it to high, and then you can go up here and increase the render scaling resolution to make up for the difference in the actual texture resolutions in sim. Right, now speaking of the filtering, anisotropic filtering, you can keep this on 16, and I think even low-end cards will be able to cope very well with anisotropic filtering. Doesn't really tax performance that much, and it helps remove the jagged lines around the edges and the corners of objects in the sim, so I recommend that you keep this on 16. The texture super sampling, on the other hand, will have an effect on performance, and as you can see, I have it set at 4x4, and this actually gives me the best visual quality versus performance, and I recommend actually everyone to keep this at 4. The highest setting is 8x8. This will definitely provide for a much sharper image, no jagged lines whatsoever. 6x6 will improve performance just a little bit. I just don't think that it's worth it, because between 6 and 4 you'll get about 3 to 4 FPS, and the difference in the visual quality is pretty much the same between 4 and 6. So the change, you're going to start to see the change both in the visuals and performance by moving this option to 8 super sampling. So I recommend this at 4. Another item that affects performance is texture synthesis. Texture synthesis, when set to high, will give you about 3 to 4 FPS, and taking this to medium will definitely give you more performance, but then the visual quality will suffer. So I recommend that you keep this on either high or medium or ultra in all cases, and just lower other settings to get the best visual quality. In terms of water waves, you can keep this on high, and keeping this, by the way, on medium if you are suffering from performance will not affect the visual quality that much. So medium or high should work. It should give you, if you're suffering, for example, you want to bump up your volumetric clouds, you can bring the water waves down a little bit, maybe to medium. Don't take it to low, because that looks terrible, just really very, very bad. So either medium or high for the water waves. Now, as far as the shadow maps and terrain shadows, I have explained this in my previous Sim Update 9 video. Suffice it to say that I have it set at 1536, and I have set the terrain shadows at 1024. I think this looks good. There isn't really any noticeable difference when you go to 1024 for both these settings. So this is actually a very good setting to have, and it will definitely give you a little more FPS. So it will increase performance by lowering the shadows down. The contact shadows, windshield, and ambient occlusion, I have all of them on ultra, and those, by the way, don't affect performance too much. Ambient occlusion, by the way, is something that has to do with lighting and reflections, and it measures the extent to which a location on the surface is obscured from surrounding light sources. So this, you will notice this the most inside the virtual cockpit when you set this to ultra, high, or medium. Again, the untrained eye will not be able to detect the differences. So again, if you are suffering from performance a little bit, you can take this down to medium, or you can actually turn it off completely, and you will not really notice that much difference in terms of the visual quality. Cube map reflections, as I've explained in my previous Sim Update 9 video, will affect performance, and there is definitely a direct correlation between FPS and this setting here. I set it to 192. I think it still looks good, and everything looks very good in terms of the reflections, and it gives me about 2 to 3 FPS or so. So I recommend that you keep this at 192. Moving to the last part of the in-sim settings, as you can see here, I have the ray march reflection set to ultra, light shaft set to ultra, bloom is on, depth of field, motion blur, lens correction, lens flare are all set to off, and the glass cockpit refresh rate is set to low. I have found that these settings actually don't do anything in terms of the experience. It doesn't really provide me with anything. And if at all, it will decrease performance. So I turn all of these off, and I keep the glass cockpit refresh rate at low. I think this is the best setting, and it really gives a lot of performance. I don't really see that much of a difference with this option set to medium or high, other than the FPS going down. So in terms of visual quality, I don't really see that much. So I recommend that you keep this at low. Let us now take a look at the traffic tab. And it's worthwhile going through this tab, as some of these items will affect performance. Now, I am using Alpha India Group and FSLTL for AI traffic interchangeably in some of my videos. And so I have the air traffic time turned off, and the show traffic nameplates is on for multiplayer, you can turn this off. That's okay. If you're doing multiplayer, you might want to turn this on just so that you can see the nameplates. Those two options, or specifically this option, does not affect performance. Now, airport life is very important. Airport vehicle density. This is how many vehicles are kind of driving around the airport, and the higher the slider, the lower the performance. I recommend for all users to set this at 50. This will give you sufficient vehicle around the airport, so you don't feel that the airport environment is completely dead. And so setting this at 50 gave me the best performance. Ground aircraft density is set to 0 because I'm using other AI traffic injectors such as FSLTL. Worker density. Now, this one is a big one. If you set this to a higher number, you will have more workers around the aircraft, but performance will suffer a little bit. So I think when I had this at 100 and I moved it down to 50, I gained anywhere from 4 to 5 FPS. So I recommend that you go to 50%. If you like to see more workers around the aircraft, bump this up to 60%, but don't take it anything more than 60, as it will start, eating up your FPS. So I recommend that you keep this at 50. Now, as far as the leisure boats, road vehicles, ships, and ferries, I keep all of these at 60. I think it gives me sufficient, visual quality and a visual pleasure by looking at leisure boats, road vehicles around. Moving the slider, road vehicles more than 60 will have a lot of cars, which doesn't look very realistic in my view. So, and it will affect performance without a doubt. So I recommend that you keep all these sliders here at 60. Fauna density, these are the animals in the world, and it's very seldom that you actually fly to a location where you can see animals such as the elephants and the giraffes. So you can set this to 100% so you can see the maximum number of animals when you do encounter them in the sim. The main aim of this settings guide is to provide you with the best flying experience in Microsoft Flight Simulator by maximizing your FPS and the smoothness. I hope that you have found this video to be useful and insightful. If you have any questions, please do post them in the comment section below. Until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you all very soon. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye for now.